Well, good evening and thank you for attending. My name's Michael Forbes. I'm the President of the New South Wales AFI, and tonight we're doing a presentation on NFPA 921 and 1033. So these documents were revised at last year, 2014, and so every 3 years they're updated. So it's a very important revision, especially the 921, because this is the document that you use for fire investigation. So we'll go through what we're going to talk about tonight. So the contents is just, we're going to talk about a little bit of history because the documents have been around for a while, and we'll talk about both the 1033 and the 921 history. We'll then go into the specific changes for each of the documents, and then the contents and those actual changes in it. Then we'll go to 921. 921 is obviously the more sort of the meatier document. As you can see, that 1033 is quite thin, whereas the 921 is obviously where you get most of your information, but we'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about the practical applications using both the documents whilst conducting fire investigations. And obviously it's important to know where to buy it, and we'll talk about briefly cfitrainer.net. Has anyone heard of cfitrainer.net? Yes? A few? Who hasn't heard of it? No one? Okay, beautiful. We'll learn some about that. Okay, so NFPA 1033. So it's hard to, I guess, get an understanding of what these documents are in relation to Australia. And a lot of people may sort of think, well, I live in Australia, these documents are United States, and so why should I use these? Well, the reason is that we don't have an Australian 921 or an Australian 1033. If you conduct a fire investigation, you need to conduct it as thoroughly as you can, so that when and if you go to court, then you're going to need to have something to say, well, how did you conduct your fire investigation? You know, what is the scientific process that you used? The only document out there in the world are these two documents, 1033 and 921. So yes, they do not specifically apply to Australia in the court sense, but if you want to conduct a thorough investigation and have your opinion stand up in a court, then this is a great start, and this is something you should be using. I do understand there's nothing Australian, but this is the document that is out there. All around the world know of it, all around the world use it, and there are a lot of things in it that are American, which is the law. The American law is put into 921 a lot, so it's not applicable to us. But the concept and the information that it portrays is very relevant and very practical and very useful. So I would strongly advise in using both documents. So the 1033 is about the job, specifically the job performance requirements, okay, for the job of a fire investigator. Okay, these JPRs, this is what it talks about, these job performance requirements. What is it? Well, they're basically used to determine exactly what skills you need to conduct a fire investigation. Okay, it applies to both public and private. There's plenty of private FIs out there, and it obviously establishes these guidelines that you need to meet. So basically it's the training and the information that you must have before you can actually go to do the job. So that's how these two documents work. 1033 has the information on what you should be looking at, what you should be studying, and 921 then gives you the guide on how to conduct the practical side of it. If you have any questions that you want to go through, certainly raise your hand. Any comments, examples? That would be good. So 1033, the last edition was 2009, so it's 5 years. They have a cycle of around 5 years for 1033, whereas 921 will have 3 years, which we'll go into later. Now, the difference between the two documents is that, and again this is US based, is that 1033 is a standard, whereas 921 is a guide. So having a standard means that it uses mandatory language. It uses words like must. You must do this. Whereas the 921, which we'll talk about shortly, is that you should do this. So that's the difference between the two documents. 1033 also mentions skills maintenance program or requirement, which was added in this edition. And then there's more specific requisite knowledge statements, which were included into the JPRs, which we'll have a look at. Okay, as I was saying, mandatory language, applicable to all parties conducting investigations. So it does say that if you are investigating a fire in any capacity, then 1033 applies to you. So in the actual document itself, if you wanted to know what the difference are between the editions, and this applies to 921 as well, if you see text with a line, that means that's new to this edition. So if you're getting used to these documents, and in 921's example, you should be looking at 921 and seeing exactly what's involved, and you should be reading it all the time, then you can see the difference between the editions. And the first edition in 1992 was quite thin, and as you can see now it's getting thicker and thicker because there's more information, there's more research, there's more technology applying to fire investigation now, so the editions are getting thicker. And sometimes things change, and so they remove information from the documents, and if you get a little dot next to nothing, that means that that paragraph or that line has been removed from this edition. So that's how you understand the difference between this edition, 2014, to previous editions. So the main changes from 1033 is that they've added 3 new types of information or subjects that you should now be aware of on top of the 13. So there's now 16 subjects that you should have a good knowledge of. And I'll explain about that, at what level of knowledge you should have in a minute. So three that were added were fire protection systems, electrical knowledge, and evidence collection. Okay, and the reason that they added these 3 was because they're fundamental subjects and fundamental knowledge when you conduct a fire investigation. You should be able to talk about these systems and electricity and evidence gathering. And again, it's different a little bit here. Over in the US, fire investigators actually take samples and collect evidence. In Australia, it's different. But still, knowledge of is certainly important. There's 4 chapters, it's pretty quick, just talks admin, definitions, but the main one is chapter 4. So generally, you must be 18, have high school, but the investigator is to have and maintain, at a minimum, up-to-date basic knowledge of the following 16 subjects, and this is the crust of it. 16 subjects, and these are the ones that you should have at above high school level. What does that mean? Well, it's open to interpretation, obviously, but if you're going into a court of law and you want to start talking about fire dynamics, then you should have a level above high school. Science, biochemistry, thermometry, explosion, computer modelling, they're all up there. So the 3 other new ones are 14, 15 and 16. So there's quite a few up there. So a fire investigator is supposed to know a lot at a basic, up-to-date high school level. So, fire investigators shall remain current in the topics listed by attending formal education nights, tick, workshops, seminars, and through other professional publications, professional organisations like this one, just here. So, by joining the New South Wales AFI, you are satisfying some needs of 1033. So, that's one reason for joining tonight. So you can certainly put it in your CV next time you go to a court. Member of the New South Wales AFI. Well done. That's good. But it says it in 1033. Okay, so fundamental knowledge beyond the high school level, all 16. Okay, again, attending that. And then 921, all those 16 subjects, where do I find information about that? It's all in here, which we're going to go through in a sec, okay? It's all in here. They make it easy, but it is a lot of information, I agree. It's hard. Let's talk about 921. So that's 1033. Pretty small, thin document, and you can read it here. It's available online. You can buy it fairly cheaply. But the 16 subjects is the key. Let's talk about 921. 921 is a guide for fire and explosion investigations. First edition's in 1992. Okay, and why? Why did they come out with this document? Because they realised that people conducting fire investigations were fire investigators that just went to high school. They had no basic or advanced knowledge in terms of scientific basis. So they produced this document in the late 80s, and it took a while to get going, and then 92 that came in, and then away it went. There was a lot of problems in the US because people have been doing it for 30 years. Says, don't tell me about fire investigation. I know about fire investigation, but really, we needed to start using science to validate your opinion, and that's how this became in a publication. So what they do is they do every 3 years, they update it, and it's because things are changing. They released the document in 2014. They ask for feedback from everyone through that first year, and in the second year they review the new document, and in the third year they get it ready to publish for the next year. So there's a 3-year cycle, and yeah, it does change. Information changes, technology changes, and you can see it, as I said, by the thickness of it. It is always getting more information. The 3 new subjects have come in, and they've actually got new chapters for that. We'll go through that in a minute of what's new. And so the complexity of fire investigation has increased. So there are now chapters which are collection of evidence, vehicles, fire gas systems, fuel gas systems, methodology. There's even canine teams in there, deaths, injuries, wildfires, etc., boat fires, marine fires, and all that stuff. So it's a very comprehensive document. One thing that I've been doing fire investigation for about 7 years. One thing which I wish I had done at the start of that first year or two is probably read this document, and I didn't. So probably around year 3, 4 and 5 is when I started to read the document, and I realised how important it was. So if there may be some people here tonight that aren't fire investigators looking to get into the field, it's one thing I can recommend. Read that book. It's very, very good in the information it portrays. Okay, so one of the things as a fire investigator is, keeping up to date on information. As per 1033, says you must have up-to-date knowledge. Well, this happens every 3 years, so you must be aware that this document is new. So you should be reading it. You should get an understanding of what is new, what is different from this edition to the last edition, 2011. Latest technology, latest research, and latest methods being used in the industry. And it goes about, it sets out how to achieve this from 1033. So the main changes, what is different? Well, for the first time ever, colour. So the documents have been printed by Nfpa, and it's been very black and white. And when you're looking at a burn pattern that's black and white makes it very difficult to get an understanding. So the colour photos are good. And it's the first time that Nfpa has actually published the document in colour. So that's one of the big changes between this edition and all the last ones. New fire protection systems, so that's important, especially in conducting a fire investigation. What it went off where first. There's a new chapter on, well, the last edition of the chapter was on fire cause and responsibility. It was one chapter. Now they've split those 2 chapters. And there's been a bit of confusion about that. We'll talk about that in a sec. More information about electrical arcing with the photos. Additional language on negative corpus. Negative corpus. Anyone like to know what is their version of negative corpus? What does that mean? Anyone? Come on, sure, someone.
Burden of proof.
Say again?
Burden of proof.
Yes.
But the other way.
Yes. So can anyone give me more information? Negative corpus, what is it?
It's elimination of other causes to then determine what must have been this.
Very good. We'll talk about that in a second, and it's a very hotly debated subject. Negative corpus. Can you use it? When can you use it? Should I use it? Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. And there's another section on failure analysis. So, yep, colour, they're much better. Colour photos, you learn much more. A better way of learning is the use of colour photos, so that's why it's in there. People, the public can view these photos, which makes it much better to learn. Case 1033's got the fire protection systems. There's more information there. The new chapter has been basically completely rewritten, so it has that line down through the whole chapter. Talks about key components, installation, operation requirements, how to get data from those systems. Okay, and from this chapter, you know, you can learn, if you don't know much about fire protection systems, by reading that chapter, you can learn exactly what it is. Again, it's US based. How much is that relevant to Australia? Well, you'd have to compare the systems that you attend each and every day as if you're a firefighter. Classification and responsibility. Again, I was confused. You know, what was the cause of the fire? Well, it's deliberate, you know. Well, actually, no, it wasn't. Until I started reading about this document, there is a difference between classification and the cause. In classification, there are 4 types: accidental, deliberate, natural, and undetermined. The cause is the circumstances that led to the fire. And that was the difference. So a lot of still confusion out there. They are not the same. People think it's the same, and I thought that it was the same too. And so this chapter, this is new, you know, provides guidelines on how to classify the fire cause. Okay, so yeah, the cause of the fire has to do with the circumstances or agencies that bring together the fuel, the oxygen, and the ignition source. Okay, and the classification is the reason behind those circumstances. So it's a very important chapter, and very important to get an understanding that there is a difference between classification and cause. Okay, yeah, the classification is that label. The cause is to do with the intent. Being deliberate, you know, is the intention of lighting the fire in a place where a fire should not be. Some fires may be deliberately ignited, but their classification may be accidental. Any examples of that?
Keep playing with candles.
Yes. You know, you might have a campfire, and you've deliberately lit it, but then, you know, the wind comes along and blows the embers away, and away it goes. It's accidental. Incendiary is, it talks about the definition has changed, and talks about a fire in a place where it shouldn't be. So these definitions, they may, you know, they have changed over time, and it's good to be up to date on the correct definitions, especially going into court. You want to sounding good and speaking the right language. Attention and fire may not be incendiary fire, example fireplace. And responsibility chapter has remained the same. Negative corpus, so this is it. So the investigator makes a determination which there is no evidence or data to support it. And the quote is, I eliminated everything else, so therefore it must be incendiary. And yes, I have used it in the past, plenty of times. But regardless of the cause, you need to be able to prove that cause. And this is what it talks about in this chapter. Very important. You need evidence. Where is your evidence? If you're going to eliminate everything, and then it must be the last one, or it must be deliberate because there's nothing there, you still need evidence. Okay, the scientific method says that you select a hypothesis, test the hypothesis, and then select the final hypothesis. Okay, and you continually go back until you can eliminate a hypothesis. It is the process of elimination, but you cannot just eliminate and eliminate, therefore it must be. You have to have evidence. Okay, if misused, then it can lead to a wrong cause. And this is what you see in the US a lot. And a lot of these arson convictions, people on death row, things like that, they talk about, the investigator says it was deliberate because everything was gone. And that's bad science. And so there's a project going in the US called the Innocence Project. If you want to look it up on the net, it talks about how these people are being taken off death row and convictions overturned, because that's what they come up with, is using negative corpus. And it doesn't happen as much here in Australia, but saying that everything's gone, nothing else there, eliminated everything, therefore it's deliberate, to a person who's going to be convicted. It's a very it's a big deal. So they give guidelines on how to sort of deal with negative corpus, and they say that don't worry about the classification until the investigation is complete. And that's the process of the scientific method. Keep an open mind. Okay, walking into a job saying it must be deliberate because I'm at a Department of Housing, and he's just been evicted, and so the house is for sale. You can't just say, well, this is deliberate from the start. Keeping an open mind will give you a proper investigation. You have to determine the origin, and if you're going to put in your opinion on an investigation and you don't have the origin, it's very difficult to come up with incendiary. It's pretty hard to. I mean, there are circumstances that may lead to that, and the book talks about those circumstances. That is, being petrol ignition and things like that, obvious pour patterns, stuff like that. Certainly, yes, but if you're going to say it's deliberate, you need to have the origin. You need to identify the fuels available, identify the ignition sources, okay, and what is the oxygen situation, okay? Where what were the circumstances come together? So this is the guidelines it's saying. So there are 4 key components to the cause. Focus on the evidence as a potential ignition source. Don't focus on what you don't have. Focus on what you have, because in the end, that's going to be your evidence to bring your determination forward and to say, yes, my opinion's this because of this evidence. What is your data? Where is your evidence to support that ignition source? And you must have supporting evidence. Where's your proof? That's the question you've got to ask. Any comments about negative corpus? No? Everyone's happy with it? Good? Oh, very good. Normally we get a bit of argy-bargy about, negative corpus, but that's fine. So the two documents together. So 1033, it's a standard, professional standard, and it's written in that mandatory language. Okay, it specifies the minimum job requirements, and you can actually go, it's almost like a training program of what you should be able to do to be a fire investigator. Both public and private, and measurable terms. So basically you are competent in the tasks that it sets, yes or no. 921 is a guide, okay? It's to assist people like you and me in investigating a fire and an explosion. It assists in rendering opinion to the origin, cause, responsibility or prevention of such incidents. Establishes guidelines for a systematic analysis, and that's what it is. It's you're doing the same thing. You're using the scientific method at every job. You must use the scientific method at every job that you attend, okay? Because you're going to show that you're going to do the same things all the time, and that outlines that methodology. It tells you how to apply the scientific method. That's important. Presents that basic knowledge, and everything that's all the 16 subjects that are in 1033 are all written up in detail in 921, so that you can read it and learn it and use it. But it is, in the end, it's a guide. Okay, how you conduct your investigation is going to be up to you. I always say that the investigation is a journey from Sydney to Melbourne. As long as you get to your determination at the end, it doesn't matter how you get there, as long as you get there at the end. So the guide is there. It's not an exhaustive document. There are going to be other references to use, and there's plenty of them out there. Kirk's Fire Investigation is one. So use it. It's only just one part. You, as investigators, need to learn more and know more by sourcing this information yourself. Yeah, so not all parts of 921 is applicable to every investigation. Obviously, if you're doing structure fire, there's wildfire information there, you don't need that. As it says, but you must use the scientific method at every scene. 1033 sets the requirements and the details, knowledge, experience, and to properly execute those tasks. 921 provides the information on to how to do it, and that will enable to them to perform the task. That 1033. So these are the tasks you should know. This is how to fulfil those tasks. Okay, a lot of information in 921. It's a great document. You've got to use it. Must know and comply with 1033. Otherwise, their opinion court may not be given. I should say. You need to be qualified. You need to be educated. You need to have that experience to make your opinion reliable. And by knowing this document, on both these documents, that will occur. Your opinion will be valid. And again, you know, every time you go to court, your opinion will only be accepted if the judge is happy with it. So every case is going to be different. But you need to show you're doing the same things. You've got your knowledge, okay, you're doing the same things at every job, so therefore that's how your opinion will count. 91 is a measure of the methodology. If you follow that, an FI can prove that their investigation was scientifically accurate and reliable. 91 provides heaps of information. FI responsibility. Make sure we continue. Yep. So it's your responsibility to ensure that their knowledge base is up to date. Okay, so where to buy it? So in Australia, you can try and buy it through the US. It's very difficult. You can go through Amazon and stuff like that. But in Australia, the FPA, so it's fpaa.com.au, Fire Protection Association Australia. You go into there, basically just type in 921, and yeah, it'll come up here, and that's the guide. So $130, and you can actually get a PDF copy of it as well. So yeah, not cheap, but if you're doing fire investigation, it's an important document. And now on to CFI trainer. So if you are a fire investigator and you're looking for some good online training, this is the website for you. So this is run by the IAAI, of which New South Wales AFI is a chapter, and it's basically was sort of been up and running through the US government. Donated a lot of money to get this up and running, and so what they do is they provide a whole bunch of programs down here. So you can log in, sign up. It's free. Everything's free, which is bloody great. And then you do these courses, and there's a whole heap of them, and they are very, very good. And one of them is actually on the 921 and 1033 changes in the 2014 edition. So you can get a lot of this information from there. But there are there's probably 30 or so different online courses, and you get points, credited hours, training hours for each of these, and they can then go towards certifications, which the IAAI run. So the IAAI have their own CFI, which is a Certified Fire Investigator certification, which is it is US based. Obviously, the IAAI is US, but it is worldwide recognised. So IAAI is one of the organisations. The other one is NFPA, which is the National Association of Fire Investigators, which also is US based. So again, they have their own certification as well, which is the Certified Fire and Explosion Investigator. So if you are looking to get into the field, or you are a fire investigator, been for many times, you've been to court quite a few times, done training, you can qualify to become a CFI. You just have to join the organisation, and then you just have to provide a certain amount of points, and it goes through chapter and verse on how to do it. Their website is actually firearson.com. So if you go onto that, there's a lot of information, and we are conducting New South Wales AFI, the Education Night next month, which is April, is a specific education night on FI qualifications in Australia, and we'll be talking about the CFI, the CFEI, the Fire Investigation Technician qualification, information through CIT, CSU. If you're a fire investigator and you're looking for qualifications, this sort of presentation will give you that information that you need to know. But this website is highly recommended. Good information. And there it is there. That's one actual program. So you can actually the credit hours is 3. It'll probably take you an hour to get through it, which is, again, just talks about the different changes. Randy gets up there. He's the main man on 921 committee. He's a funny bloke. Keep calm. Use it.